WBCK Representative Dave Maturen is here with us this half hour on WBCK. We were talking about the agenda, and you were pointing out during the break there that some of the agenda was pushed back. Of course, we lost a lawmaker last week.
Yeah, we did. Very unfortunately, Pete Battaglia, in his last few months as a state representative, riding his motorcycle to Lansing from his home up in Presque Isle, and no matter how careful a driver you are, if other people don't, do what they're supposed to do, and a lady turned left right in front of him, and that was it.
Boy.
Author of the ability not to wear a helmet, but Pete always wore a helmet when he rode. So, but just one of those happenstances in life. But it kind of took us all aback and set a few things back in Lansing. But we'll resume this week and keep carrying on.
So when that happens, that district has a vacancy, obviously, that they have to fill.
Yeah, there'll be a vacancy in that district until the new person, whoever's running for the office, takes that office in January.
Yeah, this obviously this setup was one in which he was on his way out anyhow from the legislature. So there are a couple of other candidates, we presume, that have been running, and that'll take up they'll pick up where he leaves off. But if this had not been that way, if he'd just been elected, then we'd be looking at some kind of a situation to try and find a new law.
Try a special election. We've had it. Actually, he'll be the sixth person that started this term and didn't finish it. Two, obviously, that we either resigned or we asked to leave and they left, or we told them to leave. This Indian Todd, but Julie Plowecki, unfortunately, she died over the summer in her mid-50s. Just a really great legislator, and so they had a special election to fill the rest of the year, but then another candidate's going to also run for the November 8th election, and then two representatives. One resigned to be the head of the Democratic Party, and the other resigned to be the treasurer over in Macomb County. So
yeah, that's interesting. That obviously sometimes you go into this with the intent that you're going to be fulfilling that term, but there are occasions when that doesn't happen.
Things arise, and some folks take advantage of opportunities that are out there, that if they wait, somebody else is going to fill that slot, so they decide to resign. I don't have any yearning to resign, so I'd like to continue at least one more term.
Okay.
2 terms if possible.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we presume that those opportunities came up for those people, and that was something about which they did not know at the time they were running anyway. But that seems like a high number. I mean, I don't know. We're not looking at statistics right now, of course, but 6 in one legislative term, that seems to be quite a bit.
Yeah, but I think it is.
Yeah, it's an unusual situation. So in that regard, you've had some advancing on a couple of levels here of things you've been working on. One of them is by way of a committee on Military and Veterans Affairs, which listened to some information about something you're working on. Yeah,
I partnered with Representative Wittenberg to put in a couple of bills that essentially allows an active duty military spouse, be it a husband or wife, whose spouse gets transferred into Michigan, to be able to continue practicing law. Given the timing of taking the Michigan bar, only every other 6 months, and all the other things that go along with it, the bill essentially allows someone to pick up their law practice or who they're working for and come and essentially work for somebody else. So there's a smooth transition, and it's got a lot of safeguards built into it. We had a lot of discussion, and I think took care of all the objections that folks might have. Not used that often. Very, very seldom would it be used. But I know it's it's important, especially in the military, to have that second wage earner. I've been there many years ago, and it's certainly nice to have an additional income coming in. So and it's something that I think is a good policy. That passed unanimously out of the Military and Veterans Affairs Committee, and looking forward to getting over to the Senate and getting that signed. So.
Yeah. Just to sort of understand what the lay of the land is with that, if you're a lawyer and you've passed the bar in another state and you move to a different state, then there would presumably be a bar exam you'd have to take in that state in order to practice law there, which I presume would be the eventuality here. But you're saying that this legislation would allow that person to continue their employment for a period of time while preparing to take that.
Well, and there are a lot of safeguards involved in it too, and they can only do it while their spouse is stationed in the state, while they're married to that spouse, and they obviously had to pass a bar exam in the other state and gone through a bunch of other checklist items to make sure they're qualified to operate in the state of Michigan.
And as you pointed out, this is might be a rare occasion when this comes up, but obviously you and others thought this was something important that had to be taken care of.
Yep, I mean it's just another incident where there's things fall through the cracks, and just trying to look out for folks that are out there, defending our country and performing a service, and not really knowing where they're going to end up when they get transferred. So,
how did this come to your attention? I mean, was it a specific case that was brought to your attention?
Well, there was a case that Representative Wittenberg was aware of,
and
something he brought to my attention, in knowing that I'm a veteran and I've kind of been in that same situation years and years ago. He thought it'd be good to partner up with me on the bill. So we also luckily had Supreme Court Justice Zara also testified in favor of the bill. So I think when you have the Supreme Court member saying it's a good idea, it should assuage a lot of concern among folks. So.
It's a good endorsement. That's right. All right. And so what comes next there? The committee heard that testimony, obviously.
Comes to the full, the floor of the House, pass it out of the House. Now, you got to realize this is our last week in session until we have one day in October, so we certainly could take it up then, and then nothing until after the election, and then we have the notorious, nefarious lame duck session, and lots of stuff happens. So,
all right, and we'll talk more about that too, and some other things Dave's working on in just a minute. Representative Dave Maturen is here for a few more minutes with us this half hour. Been working on another thing that has to do with investment and money as it relates to a certain fund.
Well, it's the Children with Special Needs Fund. It's House Bill 5748. There's going to be testimony this week in front of the Public Health Committee, and it actually amends the Public Health Code. But right now, the investment opportunities are pretty limited, and there's $20 million in the fund right now. This would make sure the fund always has $18 million, but the throw-off from the interest and the investment income from the fund is used to go ahead and take care of children with special needs. And my bill would essentially allow them to invest with the public employee retirement system's style of investment, still a very, very safe investment, but probably earning a little bit more interest, a little bit better return. And so, again, a lot of safeguards built in. They're not going to take a high flyer on some stock they saw at 2 o'clock in the morning on cable TV. They're going to do good sound investment, but it's going to allow them to actually do a lot with a lot of other entities in the state also use that same investment policy process. So it's it's a good thing for them, and if it can help put some more money into the needs of folks that do have special needs, let's do it. So.
All right, makes sense. Of course, this week the House passed legislation to update the medical marijuana laws. What are your thoughts on all of that?
Well, I voted for it. I think we need to have some guidance. We've had it's been a law now for 6-8 years or whatever might have been amendment to our Constitution. So, but there really hasn't been any guidance, and I think this really. I know a lot of the police agencies were in favor of. They want to know exactly, how the medical marijuana is supposed to be dispensed. It regulates the intensity of it, so you know what you're getting. It also regulates the dispensary, so it's something that's been needed for quite a few years. And I thought it was a good idea to kind of lay the groundwork and have some rules that everybody can look at and say, okay, here's what we need to do. There's some options for local communities involved in it, but something I think that's necessary. If it's the law, so let's make sure it's clear to everybody, exactly what's going on.
It seems like it's one of these situations where a law passes and you find out after it does that maybe there's some areas where we weren't quite clear on how we should word the regulation, or maybe there was a loophole somewhere we didn't know about. Is that fair to say that that's what's happened here?
Oh, yeah, I think so. And it's a typical of the law of unintended consequences. Yeah. I mean, conceptually, it may have sounded like a good thing to people, But when you're having the folks pass things in an amendment, there's a lot of other issues that need to be taken into consideration. It's just like with Proposal A, people pass that, and then there's all sorts of legislation put in place to actually enact that. So yeah, it's something that the devil's in the details.
Yeah. One of the things that we heard from law enforcement when this passed was a level of confusion about how they were going to be able to discern quickly in a situation that which is legal surrounding marijuana and that which was not. Are you still hearing those things today?
To some extent. I think this takes the ambiguity out of it as best as we can attempt to foresee what all the issues might be. But I think it needs to be clear from the community standpoint, from law enforcement standpoint, and also from the folks that are in the process of in the business of selling medical marijuana and dispensing it. I think they need some clarity too. So I think it's good for all around.
All right, and well, you mentioned a bit ago that there's one session day in October, and then, of course, the election. I presume that that's by design because it's the big campaigning push before the election, and they give you time to do that.
There's right around 50 days or so left, and I think most folks, especially in the House, the Senate, of course, isn't up for election. Folks in the House, though, do need to get out, want to get out, and get in touch with their constituents and do some door-to-door work and get the message out that that they'd like to, and in the same boat, I'd like to return for another 2 years. So.
All right, so this would give opportunity to do that, and we'll stay in touch, of course, in October and go from there.
All right.
All right, Representative Dave Maturen with us this half hour on WBCK.